Now we'll show a video, and this pertains to what we'll be talking about, especially what Steve did this past summer. Let's go.
This spot I'm standing right now, like so many other parts of Big Pine, was completely obliterated after Hurricane Irma. So Monroe County has bought this land, and their hope is that no one will ever build here again. And here's the reason why. Every fall when we get the king tides or the astronomically high tides, the ocean rises, and I'd be standing knee-deep in water right now. That means if anyone does eventually decide to build here, they're going to be dealing with sunny day flooding for as long as they own their home. Behind me is the southernmost point in the continental United States, one of the most iconic spots in all of South Florida. But what if I told you that within the next few decades, this spot could be underwater? And if that happens, this spot will no longer be the southernmost point. Adaptation is 100% necessary. Mitigation is 100% necessary. But we have to have an adult conversation about retreat, because retreat is inevitable. The question is, do we want that retreat to be proactive and managed and equitable, or do we want it to be chaotic and reactive, where wealthy people can keep adapting and people with less money have no options left?
Awesome. So with that, we're kicking off our presentation, and I'm Ariel Rodriguez, meteorologist at Telemundo 51, and also part of the Beacon Newsroom project from Solutions Journalism Network. I wanted to first say thank them for this very enlightening process. And with that, Steve, talk to me about your stories.
Okay, so Ariel came to me about a year ago, and he said, we have this new project, and I'd like you to help work on it. And the idea is solutions-based journalism. So we had been doing climate change reporting forever. Also have to give a shout out right there to Angie Lastman, who we used to work with, who did also amazing climate change coverage. You can now see her on NBC Network. Congratulations on that. We miss you. But our work as a team was already sort of happening. I wanted to just go back 10, 20, 30 years ago. So we both worked at NBC in Dallas, and Mr. O'Brien was here yesterday. I don't know if he's here today. He was our general manager. We were not allowed to talk about climate change. Okay, I worked there from 2000 to 2004 to 2010. Okay,
It was Texas in the mid-2000s.
but it was the world in at that time. Nobody was allowed to talk about climate change. We even had that segment Going Green, but it was Going Green, just don't talk about climate change. Now here we are, fast forward to 2023. Not only is it encouraged, it is now required that Ariel and I are producing climate content every single day.
Yeah, I would even say it's been expected, especially after being involved in the Climate Beacon Newsroom project. And let's just start with that. Once we started on this project, and I have to say that contrary to other experiences, we've always been very enabled by our managers. They've always been very adamant about letting us work on this type of stories. And even though we sometimes are limited on time and resources, the push for us to work on stories, it's always there. And this is something that we'll talk a little bit more as we move on. I just kind of wanted to talk about my experience. It's never been negative. I started doing climate stories way back in around 2013, and I also worked on series, and I did a lot of environmental stories. And I have never been harassed by anyone in terms of any type of political background or association with climate. I think that the South Florida population, regardless of, political spectrum colors, it's very attuned to our needs and how climate affects us in many different ways. So that opens up a portal for us to talk about these things. Once we started working on the Climate Beacon project, we wanted to go full-blown onto solutions journalism and talk about not only climate but also environmental issues that affected us. And Steve did this wonderful piece on managed retreat, and I worked on microplastics. My main goal once we started was to get the duopoly involved. We are a duopoly station, Telemundo 51 and NBC6. We're owned by Comcast, NBC Universal. And we work together very cohesively as one TV station, even though we do it in different languages. So from the get-go, my idea was to get everyone involved, and we also got other reporters involved and other meteorologists involved. And I also had the chance to do it not only in Spanish, which is what I always do, but also do it in English. And why don't you talk to me, Steve, about the experience with, and also the differences in between how meteorologists and reporters reacted to this experience of solutions journalism?
Yeah, so I would say we're going to skip ahead, I guess, to what we learned, because that's really what we're here to talk about. I went in with one idea. I wanted to produce a story about how wasteful beach replenishment is and how silly it is to just keep putting sand in the same places over and over and over. And when I pitched that to my coach at the time was Sophie, who's not here with us, she said, that's fine, but that's not going to be enough. And she said, have you ever considered managed retreat? And of course, I'd heard the term, but I really didn't know anything about it. And she's like, I can help you make a couple contacts. Anyway, why are meteorologists maybe great at solutions journalism? Because solutions journalism is a scientific process. You need to let the river take you. I went in with this idea of the story I was going to tell. It was going to be a 3-minute package on, the wastefulness of beach replenishment. It turned into a 22-minute documentary on managed retreat. And as I was starting to tell the story of managed retreat, I realized, oh, wait a minute. I can't tell the story of managed retreat unless I tell the story of chaotic retreat and climate gentrification, because that's all connected, right? Because if people are retreating, wealthy people tend to be the ones who get to take that land or can move to somewhere more expensive. So I used Hurricane Irma as an example because the Florida Keys are literally disappearing. The Florida Keys will not be there forever. In fact, in our lifetime, many of the smaller keys will be gone. And then it begs the question, well, how do you get to Key West if all the bridges are gone? So this story, I had no idea what I was doing, but I went in with a scientist and I said, just let the river guide me. And that's how I was able to just build and build and build. One source would give me 20 more sources. I'd interview all 20 people. I have them on camera. If you watch the documentary, you'll see there's a lot of experts. That's because I needed these people to tell this story, and it just ended up going in a direction I had no plans for. So maybe my scientific mind was sort of like I was trying to do an experiment in college, where you're just like, let me go in with a hypothesis, but then let the river take me to wherever it goes, and that's how we got the documentary. I think your documentary, you knew going in what you were doing. You were doing plastics. You just didn't know that you were going to have 22 minutes of material.
Yes, and I also didn't know I was producing it in both languages, so at the
Sorry
end,
about that. That would be my fault.
Different documentaries.
He's better at English than I am at Spanish, so.
But it was definitely a learning experience, and for all of you getting started on solutions journalism, my best advice is go into this project or this type of stories with an open mind. Things will change, especially if you're working on a long-term kind of format like we did, because it was first a long-term type format documentary, and then we split it into different packages, which is what we call it on TV, which are stories. You did about 5 stories. I also had 5 stories. So you need to have an open mind. You need to be able to let your story change, and of course, you always have to have in mind the 4 pillars of solutions journalism, which is what really set your stories apart. Just wanted to mention that the fact that meteorologists are seen as such a trustworthy source of information by the community also lends itself to more impact by these stories, which at the end help us give a more positive message, because people want solutions to problems that we have. Also wanted to talk about our experience with reporters was a little mixed in terms of maybe they went into this with a more set mind, being
a journalist.
Mm-hmm. I didn't consider myself a journalist. I mean, I went to school for meteorology. I got a bachelor's, a master's, and you went to school for meteorology as well.
Meteorology and journalism. I actually knew I was going to do both, so thank you, Rutgers University.
Yeah, I got into journalism by chance. So the journalist part was difficult because they were more stubborn, let's just say that. It was it's easier sometimes when you don't know something to accept and break the mold, and sometimes it's harder for people that come to it with a preconceived notion to let themselves go. But still, we got some good content, and I'll have a presentation of our project later on, and I'll talk more about it. But at the end, we had great results, and our news directors are extremely happy, and there might be some other projects in the works, which I heard in the last couple days, and I'm pushing to get solutions journalism as one of the main concentrations.
So the main reason why we're here is to talk about how this project changed our newsroom. And if nothing else, I think so many great things came of this project. I'm so proud of the work both of us did, but the most important thing, and I think the thing that will resonate, is we have a different newsroom now. We have an aggressive group of producers, so aggressive that most days I might walk into the building now thinking I'll just focus on the hurricane or the weather, and a producer will come up to me and be like, hey, can I add this VO to your weathercast? We've got this great thing on climate change. Like, everyone's thinking climate now. I can go to a producer now, and I can say, I want to add this thing to my weathercast. Climate Central sent us this great graphic. I want to throw it in. Can you give me an extra 30 seconds? We've become accustomed now to understanding that if a meteorologist is asking for more time to do climate coverage, they're going to get it now. The other thing that we really learned is, you know, in Miami, we have a busy season and a quiet season. If you've not been to Miami in, you know, December, January, and February, please come. It's amazing. But we also have a lot of time on our hands because there's not a lot of weather to talk about. That documentary I produced took about 3 months, but it had to take place in the winter. I would not be able to produce that now because it's our busy season, and hurricanes, you know, take precedence. That's what we do. But what I learned is that in the quieter season, I can produce a long-form documentary. I have the resources, the time. In the summer, what I can do every single day is put climate change coverage into my weathercast. I don't have to get it approved. I don't have to write a script. I just throw it in there. Now, I know not everyone in here is an on-air meteorologist, but for me, you know, I want people to say, hey, I want to watch Steve today because I want to see what he's going to say about the 101-degree ocean temperature in Manatee Bay. And by the way, every day in the month of July, literally every day, I did a climate change story at the top of every weathercast. Why? Because it was the hottest July we've ever seen, and that 101 ocean temperature was so easy for people to digest. And more people commented on the climate change coverage than any forecast I've ever had.
That's right. And like I told you, our time ran out. We talk too much. We're used to it, and our time was it's never enough for meteorologists. But thank you so much for letting us talk to you about this. And if you have any questions, let us know later. Thank you.